Have you ever noticed that the older you become, the more people start acting like your life belongs to everyone else? Good morning. I'm sitting out here on my balcony today. The sun is slowly rising over the trees, and the morning light is pouring across the yard. I've got my black coffee beside me. It's calm, quiet, peaceful. And before we get into today's conversation, I just want to say thank you. The response to my last story honestly overwhelmed me. So many of you reached out and shared your own experiences about choosing peace and walking away from unnecessary noise. It means more than I can explain that an old engineer sitting quietly at home could somehow connect with so many people around the world. In fact, do me a small favor, leave a comment below and tell me where you're watching from today. I genuinely enjoy reading those comments. Somehow it makes this loud, chaotic world feel a little smaller, a little more like a neighborhood. So grab your coffee, your tea, or whatever keeps you company in the morning. Pull up a chair, and let's talk for a while. Today, I want to speak about something I had to learn the hard way. I'm 78 years old now, and if there's one thing I've realized about reaching your late 70s, it's this. People suddenly stop filtering themselves around you. When you're younger, people tend to respect your boundaries. But once you get older, especially if you live alone, people start treating you like an open file cabinet. They assume that because you've lived a long life, they're entitled to ask you absolutely anything. Friends, neighbors, even complete strangers standing beside you in a grocery store line, they ask questions they would never dare ask someone in their 30s. For years I answered them. I believed being polite meant always leaving the door open. I thought if someone asked me something, then it was my responsibility to respond. But a few years ago, I realized something important. Answering every question doesn't make you polite. It makes you tired. Every time you explain yourself, every time you defend your choices to somebody who's simply being nosy, you give away a little piece of your peace, and at 78 years old, peace is the most valuable thing I own. I'm no longer wasting it on bad investments. So over the past few years, I've developed a system. And being an engineer, I've always liked systems. I've identified 5 specific questions that people constantly ask older folks. 5 questions I simply refuse to answer anymore. And today, I want to share them with you because I have a feeling many of you are tired of answering them too. Let's begin with question number 1, the financial investigation. Usually it sounds something like this. Arthur, how are you surviving on a fixed income? Or if it's a relative, they'll ask, so Arthur, what's the plan for the house? What are you leaving the kids? I worked hard for over 40 years. I ran the numbers. I built the spreadsheets. I know exactly what I have, down to the dollar, and I know exactly how long it needs to last. But people become strangely fascinated with the finances of older people. They want to measure you somehow. They want to know if you're struggling so they can pity you, or if you're comfortable so they can quietly judge how you spend your money. I remember running into an old coworker at the pharmacy one afternoon. We were standing there waiting for our prescriptions, and completely out of nowhere, he asked me if inflation was eating away at my pension. And the way he asked it wasn't concern, it was curiosity. The kind that makes you feel like you're being inspected. A few years ago, I would have answered politely. I would have felt the need to reassure him that everything was fine. But this time, I simply looked at him, gave him a dry little smile, and said, I'm doing exactly as well as I need to be doing. Then I turned my attention back to the pharmacist counting pills. You do not owe anybody a report about your finances. You do not owe anybody an explanation for your budget or your lifestyle. If you want to buy a $200 saw for your workshop, buy it. If you want to eat oatmeal for dinner to save $10, do that too. But never allow someone to drag you into a conversation where you feel forced to justify your survival. Your money is your business. And sometimes the best response is silence. Let it hang there until they become uncomfortable enough to change the subject themselves. Trust me, it works. Now let's move to question number 2, the regret trap. It usually sounds like this. Arthur, do you wish you had done things differently? Do you regret not traveling more? Do you regret that relationship you tried a few years ago? People love asking older people about regret. They think they're being deep or philosophical. They think they're uncovering wisdom. But most of the time, they're really just trying to validate their own choices. They want you to say you regret working too much so they can feel better about quitting their own job. My wife, Elena, passed away when I was 68. We had a beautiful, quiet life together. We didn't travel the world. We built a home instead. We raised our daughter, Sarah. And yes, when I was 73, I briefly dated a woman named Sylvia. It was exhausting. She wanted constant excitement, constant spending, constant changes. She even wanted to redecorate my living room. Eventually, I ended the relationship because it was draining the life out of me. So when people ask me whether I have regrets, they expect some emotional confession. They expect me to stare out the window and sigh dramatically about all the things I should have done differently. But I don't. And I refuse to let anyone pull me backward into old chapters of my life simply for their entertainment. The past is a closed book sitting quietly on a shelf. I'm not reopening painful pages for a casual audience, because when someone asks you about regret, what they're really asking you to do is sit there and judge your younger self. And I refuse to do that. My younger self made the best decisions he could with the knowledge he had at the time. So now, whenever someone asks me about regrets, I simply say, my life unfolded exactly the way it was meant to. End of discussion. Now let's talk about question number 3, the gossip invitation. Did you hear what happened to so-and-so? What do you think about what she did? There's this strange assumption that once you retire, you must automatically become bored. And if you're bored, then surely you must crave drama and neighborhood gossip to stay entertained. Last month, I was at the hardware store buying screws for a birdhouse I was building. A woman from my neighborhood, Mrs. Higgins, the same woman who introduced me to Sylvia, cornered me in the plumbing aisle. She leaned toward me and started whispering about another neighbor getting divorced at 70 years old. She looked at me, waiting for some dramatic reaction. Listen carefully. At my age, my energy is like a battery that no longer holds a full charge. Every day, I only have so much of it available, and I refuse to waste it worrying about somebody else's divorce. Gossip drains people. It pulls you into chaos that doesn't belong to you, and afterward you feel emotionally dirty. So standing there beside the PVC pipes, I looked at Mrs. Higgins and used one of my favorite responses. I said, "You know, my hearing isn't what it used to be, and honestly, I think that's worked out pretty well for me." Then I asked her to hand me a box of nails. You don't need to have an opinion on every piece of drama floating around your neighborhood, and refusing gossip doesn't make you rude. It simply means you're no longer allowing people to dump emotional garbage in your front yard. Now let's move to question number 4, productivity guilt. This one usually comes from younger people. Quite often it comes from my daughter, Sarah. I love her dearly, but she's a fixer. She believes life should always be moving. The question sounds like this: Dad, what are you even doing with all your free time? Why don't you volunteer somewhere? Why don't you start selling your woodworking? Why don't you join a club? Society is obsessed with productivity. From the time we're children, we're taught that our worth is connected to our output. If you aren't producing something, achieving something, building something, then somehow you're falling behind. I wake up every morning around 5:30. I make my coffee. I sit right here on this balcony. Sometimes I spend an entire hour simply watching birds, just watching them. I don't photograph them for social media. I don't turn it into a project. I simply sit there and exist. Later, maybe I'll go out into the garage and sand down a piece of wood. Not because I plan to sell it, just because I enjoy the feeling of wood beneath my hands. When Sarah asks what I'm doing with my time, she asks because she loves me. She worries I'm fading away. But I've stopped defending my stillness. I used to list my accomplishments for the day just to prove I wasn't lazy. I'd say things like, well, I fixed the stairs, went to the bank, and read 50 pages. I don't do that anymore. Now I simply tell her the truth. I'm doing absolutely nothing, and I'm doing it remarkably well. Peace is not laziness. Learning how to enjoy the slow rhythm of a day that belongs entirely to you is actually a tremendous achievement. You do not owe anybody a productivity report. You've already worked your whole life. You've already paid your dues. And if you want to spend a Tuesday afternoon staring at clouds drifting across the sky, then you've earned that right. Don't let anyone convince you that you still need to keep running on the hamster wheel after you've already finished the race. And finally, question number 5. This is the big one, the whispered one, the question people ask with pity in their eyes. Aren't you lonely living in that big house all by yourself? This question used to keep me awake at night. It's the same question that pushed me into that exhausting relationship with Sylvia. Because society teaches us that being alone is tragic, we're taught that a house with only one heartbeat inside it must be a sad place. People look at me, a 78-year-old widower, and assume my life is some kind of waiting room. They assume I must desperately want somebody there to fill the silence, but they don't understand the difference between isolation and solitude. Isolation is when you're disconnected from the world and feel empty. Solitude is when you step away from the world and finally feel full. My house is not empty. It's filled with memories. It's filled with the smell of cherry wood drifting out of the garage. It's filled with books I finally have time to read. And most importantly, it's filled with my own thoughts. Thoughts I can finally hear clearly because nobody is talking over them anymore. When people ask whether I'm lonely, they're usually projecting their own fear onto me. They're terrified of being alone with themselves, so they assume I must be terrified too. I don't answer this question with long explanations anymore. I don't try to convince people that I'm happy, because honestly, if they have to ask, they probably wouldn't understand the answer anyway. Now I simply look them directly in the eye and say, with a perfectly straight face, no. The quiet and I get along just fine. We've never fought over the television remote. Listen to me carefully, especially if you're in your 60s or 70s and feeling pressure from the world around you. Do not let the fear of dying alone force you into a life that makes you miserable while you're still alive. I'm going to repeat that because somebody out there truly needs to hear it today. Do not let the fear of dying alone force you into living a life that makes you wish you were dead. Don't invite chaos into your peaceful home simply because society tells you an empty chair is something tragic. Don't drain your savings, exhaust your body, or abandon your routines just to prove to the neighbors that you're still in the game. You do not have to perform for anybody, and you do not have to answer intrusive questions just because somebody asks them. Silence is not empty. Silence is protection. Silence is a boundary. And sometimes silence is the most powerful tool you have for protecting the peaceful life you've built. So the next time somebody asks you one of these questions, try something different. Just smile. Let the silence stretch for a moment. Watch them grow uncomfortable. Then calmly ask them to pass the salt or hand you a box of nails. You'd be surprised how powerful it feels once you realize you don't owe anybody an explanation. And if today's conversation resonated with you, if you're tired of answering the same intrusive questions and you're ready to embrace the strength that comes with silence, then go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Leave a like so this message can reach somebody else who may need it today. And before you leave, drop a comment below. Tell me this: what's one question you're absolutely tired of people asking you? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you for sitting out here on the balcony with me today. Thank you for spending this time with me. Enjoy your coffee, enjoy your peace, and I'll see you in the next one. Subscribe to Golden Times USA channel for more valuable content. I'll see you in the next video. Take care.